What if chasing happiness is the very thing that's been keeping you stuck, weak, and unfulfilled? Nietzsche wrote, "All that heightens the feeling of power is good. All that proceeds from weakness is bad." Think about that for a moment. You've been taught to build your life around happiness, but what if that idea is actually holding you back? Ready to discover why happiness is the lie holding you back? Let's look at what you've really been told about happiness, because it might not be what you think. If you're ready to challenge your beliefs, don't forget to like and subscribe. The modern world pushes a single story about happiness. Ads, films, and self-help books promise you a perfect life free of pain, and you've bought every lie. The message is everywhere, from billboards to the endless scroll of your phone. Happiness is the goal. Comfort is the reward, and you should avoid anything that threatens that comfort. But pause for a moment. What does this version of happiness actually do to you? It's not just a harmless fantasy. This happiness is passive. It doesn't ask you to change, to struggle, or to grow. It keeps you in place, wrapped in a blanket of easy pleasures that feel good for a second, but leave you emptier than before. Every time you reach for your phone to scroll through social media or order takeout because cooking feels like too much effort, you're choosing the path of least resistance. These choices aren't just habits, they're symptoms of a bigger problem. Each time you go for what's easy, you're reinforcing a cycle: comfort over challenge, ease over effort. Think about what this does to your life over time. You start to avoid anything that feels uncomfortable or difficult. You put off the hard conversations, skip the workout, ignore the project that might actually move you forward. You chase tiny hits of pleasure, but they never last. The more you indulge in comfort, the weaker you become. Not physically weak, but mentally, emotionally. You lose the ability to cope with real challenges because you never practice facing them. Nietzsche saw this coming. He wrote, "What human beings want is an increase of power. Driven by that, will they seek resistance?" The world you live in, though, has convinced you to want less. Less pain, less struggle, less effort. The promise of happiness as comfort is a trap. It's not about making you better. It's about keeping you predictable and easy to manage. When you're comfortable, you don't question anything. You don't push yourself. You don't demand more from your life. This isn't just a philosophical idea. Positive psychology research shows that people who chase happiness for its own sake often feel less satisfied. The more you try to avoid discomfort, the more fragile you become. The smallest obstacle feels like a crisis. You start to measure your life in moments of pleasure, never noticing how shallow those moments are. The cycle repeats. You feel restless, so you reach for comfort. But comfort only makes you more restless. You might tell yourself that you're just taking care of yourself, that you deserve to feel good. But ask yourself, are you really satisfied? Or do you feel a kind of dull emptiness that never quite goes away? The truth is, you're not meant to be comfortable all the time. Comfort is supposed to be a reward for effort, not a way of life. When it becomes the default, it turns into a cage. Look back at the moments you're proud of. Were they easy? Did they come from avoiding discomfort? Or did they come from pushing through something hard, from testing your limits? Real growth happens when you meet resistance. It's in the struggle, the failure, the getting back up. That's what makes you stronger. Nietzsche's point is simple but brutal. Comfort breeds mediocrity, and mediocrity is where dreams go to die. The trap is that comfort feels safe. It's predictable. But it also keeps you small. Every time you choose ease over effort, you reinforce the bars of your own cage. You don't move forward. You just circle the same ground, waiting for something to change but never doing what it takes to make it happen. But what if struggle isn't the enemy? Stay with me. If happiness as comfort is a trap, then what's the alternative? What does it look like to want more than just feeling good? This is where Nietzsche's idea of the will to power comes in, and it's nothing like what you've been told. Nietzsche once wrote, "Not increase of consciousness is the goal, but enhancement of power. He meant something far more personal than the usual image of power you're used to. Forget the idea of power as domination or control over others. That's not what's at stake here. Nietzsche's idea is about you, about the growth of your own capacities and the mastery of yourself. He put it plainly, not contentment, but more power. This is the core difference. While most people are taught to pursue happiness as comfort, Nietzsche argued that the real goal isn't feeling good, it's becoming stronger. Power, in his philosophy, means self-mastery, the ongoing process of pushing your own boundaries and developing your abilities. It's not about collecting trophies or building empires. It's about the energy you generate by facing resistance and overcoming it. Think about the athlete who trains for years, not just to win a medal, but to become faster and stronger than before. Or the writer who spends hours every day refining their craft, facing rejection and self-doubt, but using that struggle as fuel. These aren't just random examples. They match what philosopher John Richardson described as the enhancement of a capacity or activity already given. Power is about taking what you have and elevating it, reaching for a higher level of skill or understanding. It's a process, not a destination. This process is never passive. Nietzsche believed that power is something you create through action, not something you simply acquire. It's about self-overcoming. You set a goal that's just out of reach, and you work toward it, failing, learning, and adapting along the way. Every time you push through resistance, you move to a higher level of capability. That's what he called the will to power, a drive to grow, to expand, to become more than you were yesterday. You might think that happiness is the goal, but Nietzsche flips that idea on its head. He wrote, "What is happiness?" The feeling that power increases, that a resistance is overcome. Happiness in this view isn't something you should chase directly. It's a byproduct, a symptom of growth. When you overcome a challenge, when you push through discomfort and come out the other side stronger, that's when you feel real satisfaction. It's not the comfort itself that matters, but the process of becoming. Now ask yourself, how often do you avoid that process? How many times have you chosen distraction or comfort because it was easier than facing a challenge? Most people see power only as something external, something tied to status or control. That misunderstanding leads to avoidance because chasing that kind of power feels empty or even wrong. But the real loss isn't just a bad definition. It's the missed opportunity for growth. Here's what matters. Power is not about taking from others. It's about generating energy within yourself. It's the drive to be better today than you were yesterday. Think about the last time you pushed yourself to the point where you broke through a barrier, physical, mental, or emotional. That moment of struggle and the progress that came from it is what Nietzsche called power. It's not given to you. You earn it step by step by facing resistance head-on. Discomfort is part of the deal. Nietzsche didn't promise an easy life. He believed that if you're not struggling against something, your own doubts, your fears, your limits, you're stagnant. The happiest moments, the ones you remember, are almost always linked to overcoming something hard. That's why he tied happiness to the feeling of increased power. Without resistance, happiness is shallow. True fulfillment comes from the effort, not just the outcome. Society tells you to stay safe, to avoid pain, to make things as easy as possible. But that advice keeps you small. Nietzsche argued that resistance is where transformation happens. When you're up against your own limits and you keep going, that's when you find out what you're really capable of. The will to power thrives on this process, on meeting resistance, adapting, and growing stronger. Without challenges, you wouldn't know what you're capable of. The most powerful version of yourself doesn't come from avoiding struggle. It comes from embracing it, failing, learning, and pushing forward anyway. Every setback, every obstacle is a chance to build something new in yourself. So, how often have you stepped away from that kind of growth? How many times have you chosen comfort over challenge? It's worth thinking about, because next we'll see why resistance isn't your enemy but your greatest ally. Struggle isn't just something you encounter on the way to your goals, it's the very engine that drives growth. Nietzsche wrote in The Will to Power, "The will to power can only express itself against resistances. It seeks what resists it." This isn't just a clever philosophical point. It's a radical challenge to everything you've been taught about comfort and ease. Society tells you to eliminate pain, to make life as smooth as possible, but Nietzsche saw resistance as essential. Without it, you never really develop. You never test your limits. You never find out what you're capable of. Think about your own life. The instinct to avoid discomfort is strong. It's human nature to seek what feels good and to steer clear of what doesn't. But where does that instinct actually lead? When you dodge the hard things, you're not just sidestepping pain. You're sidestepping the very process that makes you stronger. Nietzsche argued that resistance isn't a roadblock. It's the necessary friction that sharpens you, shapes you, and pushes you to become something more. Let's make this real. Imagine you're learning to play an instrument. At first, your fingers fumble, your timing is off, and every mistake feels like proof you should quit. But as you keep practicing, as you push through frustration and self-doubt, something changes. You improve. You hit the right notes. The small victories start piling up. Nietzsche called this the game of resistance and victory. The satisfaction you feel doesn't come from avoiding the struggle, but from meeting it head-on and overcoming it. That's the pattern. Every meaningful achievement, whether it's speaking up in a tough meeting, running your first mile, or mastering a new skill, follows this same cycle. The reward isn't just the outcome, it's the transformation that happens along the way. Nietzsche went further in. On the genealogy of morality, man desires suffering, provided he is shown a meaning for it. The point isn't that you should seek out pain for its own sake, but that resistance gives suffering a purpose. When you know why you're struggling, when you see the growth that comes from it, the pain becomes bearable, even valuable. It becomes the raw material for your own development. Without meaningful resistance, suffering is just empty discomfort. With it, every obstacle becomes a chance to level up. But here's the problem. The world sells you comfort as the highest good. From childhood, you're conditioned to believe that anything difficult is a failure. That struggle is a sign you're on the wrong path. There's always a shortcut, an app, a distraction ready to take the edge off. The truth is, this constant pursuit of ease keeps you passive and predictable. It convinces you that happiness means avoiding difficulty, but that kind of happiness is shallow. Ask yourself, has choosing comfort ever brought you lasting fulfillment? Or just temporary relief? Physical resistance is easy to see. If you've ever tried to get stronger, you know that muscles only grow when you push against real weight. The discomfort is the signal that you're adapting, getting better. But resistance isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, even spiritual. The fears you avoid, the doubts you suppress, the insecurities you run from. These are all forms of resistance, and every time you face them, you expand what you're capable of. The process is never comfortable, but it's always necessary. You might hope that one day you'll overcome all your struggles and finally get to relax. But Nietzsche knew better. There's no finish line. Overcoming one challenge just opens the door to the next. That's not a flaw in the system. It's the point. Each new resistance is another chance to grow, another opportunity to test yourself. The cycle never ends, and that's what gives life its meaning. So, if resistance is always with you, you have a choice. You can keep chasing comfort and end up stagnant, or you can embrace struggle and keep growing. The question isn't whether you'll face resistance, it's whether you'll use it. If resistance never really ends, why accept anything less than constant self-overcoming? Nietzsche put it bluntly in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Whatever I create and however much I love it, soon I must oppose it and my love. That's the reality of a life built on self-overcoming. The things you work for, the achievements you cherish, eventually become the very things you must surpass. This isn't a flaw in your nature. It's the core of what it means to grow. You've been told since childhood to chase milestones, the perfect job, the dream relationship, financial security. The world sells you the idea that happiness is waiting at the end of some checklist. But every time you reach a goal, the satisfaction fades. There's always another hill to climb, another standard to meet. The truth is that restlessness isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're wired for more than a rival. Nietzsche called this the circle of power. You don't move in a straight line toward a final destination. Instead, you live in a cycle, set a goal, face resistance, overcome it, and then look for the next challenge. The process never ends, and that's exactly the point. Fulfillment isn't in the finish line. It lives in the act of striving. Bernard Regenster explains that those who will power must not destroy but overcome their own creations, constantly seeking fresher challenges. You can't stay satisfied with what you've built. To keep growing, you have to move beyond what you once loved or achieved. That means discomfort is permanent. You'll always feel that urge to push further, to test yourself against something new. If you ignore it, you stagnate. If you listen, you keep becoming. Think about your own life. Maybe you landed a promotion, earned a degree, or hit a personal milestone. At first it felt like you'd arrived, but the feeling never lasts. That itch returns. The need for a new project, a tougher challenge, a higher standard. That's not weakness. That's the will to power working inside you. Nietzsche wrote, "The pursuit of power is without final goal unless the joy of circle is itself a goal." Meaning isn't about arriving somewhere and stopping.